on, vinyl community? Welcome to another video with the Record Spinner. Today's video is going to be the third episode of Vinyl Pickups, showcasing the records that I acquired within the months of March and April of 2026. And there is quite a bit to get through in this video. We have various assorted Queen records, some unofficial Mötley Crüe pressings, the newest reissues from Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the newest album from Courtney Barnett, Third Man Records' recent vault package centered on Jimi Hendrix, the remix of Aerosmith's debut album, some King Gizzard records, some various Yes albums, albeit new or Record Store Day related, and so much more. It's about to go deep, so without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the latest finds. Okay, so the first record I'm going to show you guys, I picked up locally at Wall to Wall Sound and Video, and I think at the time when I picked this up, I was in a big sort of Monkees kick, and I think it was because I had just written my review of the new Monkees compilation that had come out this year called The A's, the B's, and the Monkees. So usually when I'm into a specific band, if they're like the current flavor of the week and I find myself at a record store, I'll check out the section, see what they have, get some gap fillers or get something that I've been kind of wanting. And sure enough, I looked in the section and I did not have this record in my collection. And I kind of remember when this came out. And it is the album Good Times. So this came out back in 2016 to coincide with the group's 50th anniversary. And it's kind of a nice sort of closing footnote because Mickey Dolenz, Michael Nesmith, and Peter Tork did record some fresh material for this, but they also flew in some old backing tracks and vocal tracks from the 60s that Davy Jones performed on since he had passed away in the early 2010s. So they work him into the fold. But what's really cool about this record are the songwriters that contribute the material. And there's tracks on here that were written by the likes of Rivers Cuomo of Weezer, Andy Partridge of XTC, Noel Gallagher of Oasis, as well as Neil Diamond, who had penned many Monkees classics back in the day. But I remember when this came out, I was working at FYE, and they actually had a colored vinyl exclusive pressing that I came close to getting, but I think someone else had purchased it and we just never got it back in. So 10 years later, I'm finally getting it in my collection. And overall, the artwork is very fun, very playful and cartoonish. And that kind of continues on to the printed inner sleeve here. And what's really fun about this is that you actually get this fun little Monkees sticker sheet, which is absolutely rock solid. And nice vibrant red center label with the Monkees logo. Pressed at Record Industry, mastered by Ryan K. Smith. So all around good stuff. I'm really stoked to give this a spin on the turntable. And I was also on a little bit of a Queen kick, as you'll see with this month's finds. And I think that's because I was really jazzed up, no pun intended, for the Queen 2 box set, because they did a remix of Queen 2 and they did the whole super deluxe thing. So I was feeling some love for Queen. And I picked up this cool sort of legal bootleg, semi-unofficial type release. And it's one that I've encountered in the past, but again, passed on it. And I don't know why. But it is Queen Reigns the World. Notice how it says The Queen. I'm just going to say Queen Reigns the World, live in Mannheim, 1986. So this is a soundboard / radio broadcast taken from the Magic Tour, which was Queen's last tour with Freddie. And it's basically the full show. I mean, you really have all the heavy hitters. Starts off with One Vision, Tie Your Mother Down, Kind of Magic, Under Pressure, Another One Bites the Dust. I mean, if you're familiar with the Live at Wembley Stadium video, this is pretty much that, just live in Germany. But overall, the packaging is really cool. You have a great shot of Freddie and Brian on the front. Nice wide shot with Freddie in the crowd on the back with a little advert for the show. Queen and Marillion. That's a good bill right there. And this is a 2 LP set. And it is pressed on yellow vinyl, which looks absolutely rock solid. So I was really stoked to sort of supplement my Queen live collection because I've kind of been waiting for an obtainable vinyl reissue of Live at Wembley Stadium, and it just has not happened. So this show will definitely fulfill my live Queen fix. So Queen live in Mannheim 86. And then this next record I actually picked up over at Void Records, which is this little booth at this sort of local indoor, I guess, flea market, you can say, called The Spot. And Void Records is not only just a record setup, it's also a record label. And I actually, when I was there, I filmed the label founder, Brian Hewlett, for a video that's going to come on my channel very, very soon. I'm just working on it, and it's going to tie in with a review of one of his releases. And when we wrapped up the interview, I was conscious to pick up a record that he had released on his label. And after I had expressed that I liked the record that he gave me to review, he said, try this one out, you know, see what you think of it. And for 20 bucks, you know, it's not, there's worse things that you can spend $20 blindly on. And that is Gizzard Doom Level 6.5. So Void Records, they specialize in a lot of those sort of obscure, rare, private press records that, to me, exist within this other realm of music that is almost parallel with the other giants that everyone worshipped and loved in the 60s and 70s. And there's a little write-up in the back here. It is described as flooded with gushing organ and Tolkien reverence, Beatle-esque at times with excellent songwriting. So I figured on that, you know, sort of description alone, I figured for 20 bucks it was worth a shot. So I went ahead and picked this up. And the great thing that Brian does with Void is that all his reissues are properly licensed. He reaches out to the original bands. He gets the masters. So it's really solid stuff. And the thing is, you know, these private press records, you know, they're usually like pressed up like less than 1,000 copies. They go for 3 figures. So, you know, for 20 bucks, you know, get your foot in the door. So really excited to dig into Gizzard Doom. And again, back into the Queen vein. So I found this at a Barnes & Noble. My girlfriend and I were out shopping, and I was kind of conscious to find this. And the thing is, I knew that this was available on Amazon, but, you know, what's the fun in that? It's, for me, knowing that there's access available, you know, when it comes to getting records, that's one thing, but to find it out in the wild, it's the thrill of the hunt, and that's what kind of keeps the hobby intact. So I picked up this. This is the Bohemian Rhapsody 50th anniversary edition. So this came out at the tail end of 2025. They basically did a 12-inch reissue of the Bohemian Rhapsody single. They also did a clear vinyl version of A Night at the Opera, but I already have like 3 copies of it, so I don't know if I want a 4th. But I saw this and I thought this was pretty cool, and I don't have the Bohemian Rhapsody single in my collection in general. And as you can see, for this 50th anniversary version, they took a still from the music video as the cover. They added some gold text there. You got some elements from the Night at the Opera back cover. And then as for the vinyl, it is pressed on very rich blue vinyl, which is very cool. So I was really stoked to find this Queen 12-inch for my collection. And now we are going to move on to some Mötley Crüe, albeit unofficial Mötley Crüe. So these albums, especially the first one I'm going to show you, I don't think will ever be reissued. And when you see it, you'll understand why. It is indeed the self-titled Mötley Crüe album from the mid-90s. Yes, it is the one with John Corabi on vocals. And I honestly think that Metallica just either ignores the fact that this album exists, or they try to pretend that it never happened, because it has never been properly reissued. And given that they haven't even reissued Generation Swine, and that has the classic lineup, I don't know if we're ever going to get this. So you have to revert to the unofficials, I'm afraid to say. But again, this was a gap filler, and I had a couple records I was willing to part ways with at trade over at Orek Vacuums and Records. I always give plenty of love to that store. I was able to just do an even trade, got my hands on this, and I was very happy. Now, this has been pressed up several times over the years. I can't remember, because there's a couple of cover variants. There's this one with the red text, and I think there might be one with the yellow text that may have been out before, but this is the newest up-to-date version, which comes in a gatefold sleeve with the red text on the front. And there's all kinds of stuff here. We have a sort of fold-out poster, which looks like that. And we also have an insert, double-sided insert, I should say. And then as for the vinyl, both LPs are pressed on this sort of yellow with orange splatter vinyl, which looks absolutely stunning. You have those Electra labels there, so it kind of looks legit. But yeah, I doubt that they'll ever properly do this. So you got to get your hands on something while you can. And then here is a Mötley Crüe live album that I was apprehensive on getting this because I'm like, okay, maybe they'll press it up this year because it's the anniversary, but also it's the theme of their new tour that they're going on this summer. And I am talking about Carnival of Sins Live. So this goes back to around 2006. This was a big, stage production that they had put together. The concert film, honestly, is worth watching. But the set list, to be quite honest with you, is pretty much like a greatest hits live set list. You have the typical things like Shout at the Devil, Too Fast for Love, Looks That Kill, yada yada, Live Wire. But there's also some other cool tracks on here like 10 Seconds to Love, Red Hot, On With the Show. What else is on here? Glitter is on here as well from Generation Swine. They also do If I Die Tomorrow, which was the sort of new reunion single at the time. And yeah, I figured I would get this as well. Again, another trade. So I walked out, even Stevens with this. And this is a 3 LP set. It does come in a single pocket, so there's no trifolds or any extras. But it is pressed on sort of metallic silver vinyl, which looks really, really sharp. So I was really happy to get some live Crüe in my hands. And then we go from sleazy Crüe to audiophile prog. See, there's enough ground to cover. So these actually came in courtesy of Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab / Music Direct. I've been doing this series on Groovy Music Club where I review all of the Emerson, Lake and Palmer reissues that MoFi has been putting out. They're doing the classic catalog, and it's all solid stuff. And these two titles they have just released. And we have here the live album, Pictures at an Exhibition, aka the album that more or less made me curious about the world of classical music, because ELP did their take on this piece of music done by Modest Mussorgsky, along with some other bits of their own in the piece, and they do some great adaptations. It's ELP doing what they do best, and it's also, in my opinion, one of the most greatest, well-recorded live albums out there. I mean, if you're looking for an audiophile experience from a live album, I'd say this is a prime candidate. And of course, MoFi does a great job as always with the stout jackets and the packaging. And then just for the sake of showing, there's the label right there. So this looks really solid. And then moving on, we have my favorite Emerson, Lake and Palmer album, and that is Trilogy. This is a studio masterpiece, and I say that in the sense that this album rarely got represented live just because there's so many overdubs and the arrangements were so elaborate. But to me, this is just them completely just upping the ante in terms of their arrangements and everything. Obviously, you have From the Beginning on here. The title track is great. The Endless Enigma, Hoedown, their adaptation of Aaron Copland's Hoedown is great. But yeah, fantastic record, and I absolutely love this this gatefold jacket here, where you have the band kind of superimposed many times. And this was shot over at Epping Forest. What other prog band has an Epping Forest connection? Leave a comment down below and you'll get 5 extra points. So really stoked to get these new ELP pressings from MoFi / Music Direct. And then these records here that I'm going to show you, I picked up over at Main Street Music in Philadelphia. So obviously, if you guys follow me on social media, you know that I was recently featured on a broadcast of The Kiss Room at Monko Radio, hosted by Matt Porter. great guy, had a great time, and I decided to make a little day out of it since I was kind of passing by Philly. So I figured, you know what? Let me stop at a record store. I haven't really done a little record shopping venture completely on my own. So I figured I'll kill some time. And this store, for as small as it was, they had an incredible selection, and I left with some really good stuff. Starting off with a copy of Thin Lizzy's Black Rose, a rock legend. I was listening to a lot of Thin Lizzy at the time when I went to the shop. This album has Waiting for an Alibi. Sarah is on here, a rock legend as well. Again, another sort of gap filler for my my Thin Lizzy collection. There's a number of different pressings of this that I've seen. I think there might be a deluxe version, but when it comes to this period of Lizzy, I'm very happy with just the standard album. And we have a nice sort of printed inner sleeve here with lyrics as well as photos. And the center label that you see here is that Roger Dean Vertigo label, which looks absolutely solid. Also, I need to give this a good brush, and that's what happens when you store these records in these paper, not paper sleeves, but the printed inners. It happens. And then I was looking through their section of 7 inches, and I saw this. And it's funny, I had to double check to make sure that I didn't have this. And that's the thing when it comes to this artist. I really need to take more mental notes to see what I have and don't have. And there's a lot of newer stuff that I don't have of his on vinyl in my collection, particularly on 7-inch. But anyways, this right here still has the price sticker on it. This is That's How I'm Feeling by Jack White, which was the big notable single off of his No Name album, which came out back in 2024. And they did a Record Store Day Black Friday pressing of this, and this completely escaped me. I think I may have seen that it had come out, or I just never came across it, or maybe I forgot. I'm not quite sure, but I saw this and I was like, wait a sec, let me take a look here. And sure enough, Record Store Day Black Friday. And you know me, Jack White is the reason why I got into vinyl collecting in general, so I really owed it to myself to pick this up and add it to my Jack White collection. I don't go crazy over 7 inches, but if it's Third Man related, I will pick it up just because I associate the format with collecting. And last but not least, again, this is another one that I was kind of shocked to see out in the stores, because let's face it, if the shop owner is a Kiss fan or a Kiss aficionado, they're of course going to carry this. But if you didn't know anything about it, you probably wouldn't carry it. But I posted about this on social media, and everyone was kind of taking their guesses as to what the Kiss connection was. And the record I'm talking about is Lynn Christopher. So this is her one and only album, which came out back around 1973, and Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley sing backup on a track called Celebrate 2, and I believe Peter Criss also does some hand claps as well. And just to kind of further paint the picture, it was recorded over at Electric Lady, so that's where Kiss did their first demo. And it was produced by Ron Johnson. And obviously Ron Johnson kind of dates back to Gene and Paul's Wicked Lester days. So I think just because they were around in the studio trying to get time and, you know, experience whatever, they just happened to appear on this record. And original copies of this go for big money. So Real Gone Music did a reissue of it. I commend them for it. And it's funny because the guy that rang me up, he goes, great choice in the Lynn Christopher. And I was wearing a Kiss shirt, and I'm like, I bought it for one reason only. It even said it on the hype sticker. But nonetheless, it's a really cool piece of like 1970s pop and soul. It's a fun record. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And again, I didn't know a lick of this album. I just knew it, the story and the cover. Musically, nothing. So I just kind of bought it sight unseen, and I did enjoy it. And it does come with a nice sort of insert here, which breaks down each song, gives some background behind the making of the album. And this comes pressed on light blue vinyl. And it's interesting, it says Take Me With You. So this album, even though it's like a self-titled record, it often has the subtitle Take Me With You there. So it's stated there on the center label. Nice pressing, sounds great. Definitely a fun listen, but a cool sort of loose Kiss connection here. Okay, now we're going to move on to the month of April. And this first record that I'm going to show you is one that I picked up at an FYE for $14 to $15, which is a massive steal when you consider what they typically charge for their vinyl. But it's of an artist that I don't have any records of. And quite frankly, when you consider my music taste, I feel like I owe it to myself to dive more into this artist because let's face it, I only really know the radio hits. And I am talking about Mr. Todd Rundgren. So obviously the tracks I know off the back of my hand already are I Saw the Light, Hello It's Me, Bang the Drum All Day, and that's it. So I figured this will be a good, sort of primer. This is part of Rhino's Now Playing series where they put out this sort of budget line of compilations, no frills packaging, just simple and to the point. And it's funny, Todd kind of goes through what I like to call Steven Wilson syndrome, where I know his production work more than his actual music. Hell, he had produced the first Sparks album, first New York Dolls record, XTC Skylarking, so his track record's impressive, but musically it's time that we dive deeper. So there's the front cover. This is an outtake from the what's that album that he has? It's just called Todd. This is an outtake from that album cover shoot. Here's the track list. So as you see, it's a total of 10 tracks total, so it doesn't go too deep. But, for a novice like myself, this will be a nice, fun entry point for the works of Todd Rundgren. Now moving on to a new studio release by one of my favorite Australian singer-songwriters, one of my favorite musicians of the last 10 plus years, and that is Courtney Barnett's Creature of Habits. And this is an absolutely wonderful album, and it's an album that resembles change in every sense of the way, because this is her first album after disbanding her Milk Records record label, and she also moved from Melbourne, Australia to Los Angeles. So it just embodies change in every single sense, and the centerpiece of the record is a song called Mantis, which, as you can see, a praying mantis appears on the front cover, which kind of represents a sort of good omen amidst the fury of and chaos of change. But it's an absolutely wonderful record. I did a review on Tracking Angle if you want to read my in-depth thoughts on it. But it's absolutely wonderful. Nice gatefold jacket. Has some typewritten lyrics with her handwriting for the song titles. Printed inner sleeve breaking down who did what. Stella Mozgawa plays drums on here. She's played in the band called Warpaint. She also played on some of Kurt Vile's records. And hell, even Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist Flea appears on a couple tracks as well. And then there's the other side. There's Courtney there behind the lens. And it's on standard black vinyl. And yeah, definitely one of my favorite releases of 2026 so far. Now we're moving on to the latest Third Man Records vault package. And it's weird, like in the past couple of vaults, I've sort of jumped off the bandwagon just because I wasn't digging it. There was a Billy Strings one that I was kind of on, and then they also did a Jesus and Mary Chain one as well. So I was like, I don't know, the vault's kind of going in a weird direction for me. But when I saw them announce this, I was like, now we're back in business. And that is Jimi Hendrix, Valley of Jams, 1969 to 1970. So this right here is a 3 LP compilation of various studio improvisations, instrumental jams, all that good stuff. And a lot of people were kind of nitpicking this, saying just because it's sort of cherry-picked from various other posthumous albums that have come out over the last 40 to 50 plus years at this point. But honestly, this is just a fun record to just kind of vibe out to. Like, I had put this on when I was working on some YouTube related stuff, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a good thing to just kind of put on in the background, and then there's a couple of bits where you really just sort of marvel at how, great of a guitar player that Hendrix was, and it's really, really good stuff. This comes in a sort of trifold gatefold jacket. Trifold, I guess. And it breaks down recording sessions and who played on it. And I'll actually showcase everything because there is quite a bit to showcase. So the first LP comes pressed on this sort of mint green colored vinyl. Then I'm trying to make sure I take out everything that I can show you guys with this. Second LP is on yellow. And we also have this last one on purple, because of course Purple Haze. And as for extras, we do have a bonus 7-inch of some extra tracks and alternate takes. We have this little textured sheet, which has a write-up talking about the release. You get these in all the vaults these days. Vault number 67. You also have bumper stickers and patches that say, "Move over, Rover, let Jimmy take over." So you can put this on your car, put this on your jacket, and know that you have been experienced. So, excellent new vault from Third Man Records. And then here is an interesting release. I saw this pop up online, and once I did some research, it's kind of one of those things that has sort of seeped into the gray market, even though its origins have been truly rooted in the sort of bootleg foundation. And I am talking about Led Zeppelin Mudslide. So this was one of those sort of classic old school bootlegs that came out in the 70s by Trademark Equality. And recently, this company that puts out these sort of gray market releases, they go by the name of DBQP, have put out this sort of semi-official, still gray area type version of that bootleg. And it's recorded in Vancouver on March 21st, 1970, and it's from the soundboard, and it sounds really, really good. You have Heartbreaker, Thank You, which you don't really hear that too often, What Is and What Should Never Be, Communication Breakdown, Ramble On, which technically they don't play Ramble On, they just kind of jam on it at the tail end of Communication Breakdown. They also do We're Gonna Groove, which most of you probably know from the Coda album. That's on here, but it's not listed. And then there's also Since I've Been Loving You and Whole Lot of Love. And they literally went as far as to like replicate the cover of that old school bootleg on the front. And then the back has a couple of photos with the track list, standard black vinyl. But, you know, Zeppelin's one of those bands that when it comes to live recordings, I try to get my hands on just about anything. And when I saw this pop up for a really cool, inexpensive price, and given the backstory behind it, it was definitely worth owning. So glad to have some more live Zeppelin in the collection. Here is a record that I picked up at a record store in Woodbury Heights called On the Record. I was doing some shopping with my girlfriend, thumbing through the new arrivals, and he had a couple of copies of this particular record. And I guess he noticed me kind of like looking at it, and he's like, "Dude, that album is timeless. That could be made today and it would still hold up so well." And it's a band that I like, and quite frankly, I don't buy their stuff too often. You know, it's one of those things where like I enjoy what I hear, and I kind of slowly but surely get all the pieces I like, or in some cases, I don't want to say I'm a completist when it comes to this band, maybe up to a certain point. But anyways, if you're wondering what the hell I'm talking about, R.E.M's Murmur. So this was their first full-length studio record. The big highlight on here that most people should know is Radio Free Europe. I absolutely love early R.E.M. Hell, I even love them back when they signed with Warner Brothers and they did things like Green and Out of Time and Automatic for the People. But the early stuff on IRS just has that great, just sort of old school, jangly pop sort of aesthetic. And I've been meaning to get more of the early R.E.M. stuff. There's a couple of gaps I need to fill, but it's great to get a record where it all started. And this is a recent reissue that came out, I want to say in like late 2000s or so. Printed inner sleeve, and it replicates the IRS logo there. So really happy to get my hands on some early R.E.M. Really stoked to dive into this one. Here is a really cool one. So this is actually only available on Aerosmith's web store. And technically I already have this record, but I needed to get this variant because, you know, Aerosmith is one of those bands that I kind of go a little nuts sometimes with when it comes to collecting. and it is the new remix of their debut album, which I did get my hands on the big box set, which had the remastered album, the remix, the live show, the outtakes, yada, yada, yada. But yet they also did a special colored variant deluxe version of just the remix on their web store. And as you see, there's a little bit of spot varnishing on the Aerosmith logo. And what I love about this is that they actually used the album artwork for the 1975 repress, because as you see, it has the little tag featuring Dream On, because obviously they re-released it as a single and it became a massive hit, so they kind of saw it as a drive to sell more copies of the debut. But also the original artwork had like the orange banner over the top, and the band photo was a bit smaller in the middle. So to me, I think this kind of looks slightly better, but it's cool. But it's printed on like this like nice thick like stout and tip-on jacket, bit of gloss spot varnish here on the back with the band images, and it's also numbered as well. This is copy number 727. Printed inner sleeve, where you have a scan of a tape reel along with the tape box, and it comes pressed on red vinyl, which is cool. I got to get used to seeing Capitol Records instead of Columbia, because I'm so used to seeing Aerosmith records with that old school Columbia band around the label. But since they sold off the catalog and everything's coming out via Universal, Capitol Records is the way to go. But yeah, even though I do have the box set, I wanted to get my hands on this version, so really happy to have picked this up and get this cool deluxe color variant of the remix of Aerosmith's debut. All right, next up, we have some stuff from P Doom Records. Now, P Doom Records is King Gizzard's own record label, as well as a hub for basically anything Gizzard related, you know, various other groups and side projects and such. And these were actually gifted to me by my wonderful girlfriend, Abby. And this first one that I'm going to show you is one that has been on my want list for a couple of years. And I've never encountered it before, because it's one of those cases where you don't really see records by this band in record stores. I feel like you need to be a real Giz head to really be in the loop. But also recently, I wasn't having much luck finding it online. I thought it was out of print and I would have had to pay up for it, but I saw that P Doom got it back in stock, and she went ahead and ordered me a copy of it, which I am so thankful for. It's not a Gizzard record, but it is a record by a band called the Murlocs, and the album is called Calm Ya Farm. So the Murlocs is a band that includes Ambrose Kenny Smith and Craig Cook, who were in King Gizzard, but this band is a bit more in the vein of like sort of retro rock / R&B. They definitely have a great old school sound. I have a couple of their other records in my collection, but the reason why I wanted this one was because of the opening track, and it's called Initiative. And it's just a great song about, you know, facing adversity and tackling on whatever life throws your way, which is something that I very much resound with. And ever since I heard the song, I wanted the album. And then around the time of Valentine's Day, when we celebrated together, I was really like just digging into this record, and I was like, shit, why can't I find it anywhere? So the right timing has come. So glad to finally have it in my hands. It does come with a cool glossy printed inner sleeve. There's the guys right there. And it is pressed on this gorgeous green and white starbursty colored vinyl, which looks absolutely awesome. So I'm really happy that I got my hands on this. And then moving on, of course, like I said, it's a King Gizzard label, so we're gonna throw in some Gizzard as well. And it's one of those things where, like, when it comes to Gizzard's massive catalog, both in terms of studio albums and all the official bootleg stuff with demos and live stuff, I found myself like diving deeper into the live realm of Gizzard, which is where, I mean, if you love the records, great, but when you listen to them live, it just takes it to a whole other level. I had to pull myself back and realize that there's a lot of the more newer records that they've put out in the last 5 years or so that I still need to get. So needless to say, Abby also hooked me up with this album. It is called Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs, Mushrooms, and Lava. This isn't the actual cover. This is one of those cardboard backers that they always like to package their records in. Here's the cover. Here's what it looks like here. And this is probably the most collaborative sort of Gizzard album. It's basically an album built on jams. They just recorded nonstop and sort of assembled it that way. And I'm really stoked to dive into this. This is like an interesting record that sits in the middle of their whole progressive metal sort of excursions. It's funny, you know, you listen to one record of Gizzard and then you listen to another, and they're like on total opposite ends of the listening spectrum. So it's what makes diving into this band so fun. But this is a 2 LP set. Cool gatefold here. Does have printed inner sleeves with all the lyrics and such. And this version is called Lucky Rainbow Wax. So they just press it up on recycled vinyl. And what's great is not one is going to look the same. So this first one here kind of has like this dark gray kind of look. And I don't know if you can really catch it on camera, but it looks like there's some glitter in there as well. You can't really see it, but it looks great in person. And then the second LP, let's get this out, is pressed on sort of marbled green vinyl, so you get, you know, bits of like black and white in there, and I'm sure there's probably some other colors that give it this specific hue, but yeah, it looks really, really awesome. So thank you so much, Abby, for great Gizzard and Gizzard related vinyl. And you know what's funny? I feel like one band that has been a sort of common reoccurring theme in this video that you're watching is Queen. And between, you know, the release of the Queen 2 remix and box set and everything else, I have been on a big Queen kick, I guess. And that's the next record that I'm going to show you that I picked up on Whatnot, the app. I got it from VC Vinyl. They were auctioning this off at a pretty good price. I think I ended up scoring it for about 15 bucks or so. And it is A Night at the Opera, the 50th anniversary version. And as you see here, it's 50th because it has the sort of gold embossing here on the front and back cover. And you know, this is just one of those records where, you know, look, I'm looking at my Queen collection already, and there's like, what, 3 other copies of A Night at the Opera. It's one that I can't get enough of. This is a Queen record that stems from my childhood, and arguably I think it's their best album. So this present came out in 2025, and I believe, just looking at the copyright information, this is merely just a repress of the half-speed master version that came out back in whenever that colored vinyl box that came out. What was that, 2015, I want to say? So they've repressed that a couple of times. There's the Walmart exclusive, there's a Vinyl Me Please version that's slightly different, all kinds of stuff. But anyways, look, it's Not at the Opera. It's a fantastic record. 2 words, Bohemian Rhapsody, there. But also, you know, Death on Two Legs, I'm in Love with My Car, You're My Best Friend, The Prophet Song, one of my favorites. You know, this is an album that you can't go wrong with. Replicates the original packaging beautifully. We also have the printed inner sleeve here as well. And of course, because it is the 50th anniversary as well, it should be technically on gold vinyl, but it's not. We just have clear vinyl. But you do have some custom gold center labels. They didn't go ahead and do the custom label that came out at the time. So still cool nonetheless. And I always have a great fondness for this record, and it's always a blast when I listen to it from start to finish. So adding copy number 4 in the collection. Great stuff all around. Now wrapping up with some Yes, and this one here is actually a Record Store Day release that I was not able to get on the day of Record Store Day, and I wasn't able to get it from Rhino, so this is one that I had to seek out myself, which not a big deal, but also it was a necessity. And that is Tales from Topographic Tours. So this is a 3 LP set, mostly recorded in Zurich in Switzerland from April 21st, 74, which features the entirety of Tales from Topographic Oceans from sides 1 to 4, along with And You and I and Close to the Edge. Now, these live recordings are available on the new Super Deluxe edition of Tales from Topographic Oceans. And like I said, all from Zurich, which is a soundboard recording that sounds fantastic. The only track that's not from that gig is The Remembering, which is from a show at Manchester, which I think may have been recorded as like an off-air sort of monitor mix type recording. It's definitely different when you hear the Zurich recordings, but it's still historical nonetheless, because I think they dropped that song in the set list as the tour progressed. So it's really great stuff. It kind of has like a, even though it like kind of sounds like an official bootleg kind of thing, that aesthetic also continues on to the front cover art, where you have some artwork elements from Tales with the Yes logo. You have a close-up shot of the pyramid there, which is really great. It's pressed on black vinyl, but what I like about the center labels is that you have these cool live shots included, which looks really, really great. There you go. And then there's Rick there behind his cascading keyboards. So very happy to have picked up this little record store day leftover for a very good price too, I might add. And next up is the new Yes studio album. I say that in quotes because it's technically a re-release, but there's a backstory behind it, which I'll try to give a crash course on. So this is From a Page, the expanded and remastered edition. So, backstory. Back in 2010, Yes went back on the road without John Anderson. They got Benoit David on vocals, and then in the keyboard spot, there was Oliver Wakeman, who was son of Yes keyboardist Rick Wakeman. That lineup did some demos just before they committed to recording the Fly From Here album, which by that point, Oliver had left, Jeff Downes was in, but some of Oliver's contributions ended up on the record. But there was still some other material that didn't really quite come out. So I believe there was a CD EP / 10-inch vinyl release of those demos that were released only on Yes's website. And that sold out pretty quick. And I was kind of like annoyed because I wanted those recordings just because Yes is one of my favorite progressive rock bands. But this right here brings those tracks together, but kind of elaborates the narrative to where it's pretty much a full-length album. So you have, you know, those 2010 demos that Oliver had worked on, plus early versions of what ended up on the Fly From Here record that he wasn't a part of, and some other songs that were sourced elsewhere. It's a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle. I plan on reviewing this for Tracking Angle so I can kind of do the web of where everything comes from, but nonetheless, I mean, hey, we're getting a lot of new Yes between this release and then their new album Aurora, which comes out I think in June. If you're a Yes diehard, this is a renaissance period, I would say. But I was really glad to see that those recordings were released again in this expanded version, and I can get it in the collection. Of course, as always with a Yes release, you get nice Roger Dean artwork. And we also have some cool printed inner sleeves as well. So here's a great era-appropriate photo of the band with Benoit and Oliver. Here we have some lyrics. And then we have some liner notes from Oliver Wakeman as well, kind of giving the backstory. Pressed on black vinyl, 2 LP, half-speed mastering. Great stuff. I'm actually really excited to dig into these recordings and dig into what essentially became a new era for Yes. So there you guys go. That is the third episode of Vinyl Pickup, centered on the records that I acquired within the months of March and April of 2026. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video, and most importantly, keep the records spinning.